Hey everybody. All right, here we go. We're going to talk about the second batch that we're going to show you. Now, this batch is going to be, we're going to use Bolivian beans. We are going to take this up right to the edge of second crack. So we're going to be just entering into that space of the cellular body of the beans, beginning to break down and just have these second snaps. I want to get to that place with these beans because I really want to preserve some of the acidity, but still have this sort of backbone and edge present from smokiness. I'm really trying to, the aim here would be to have sweetness be the thing that's the most present, and on the two sides of that, balancing some acidity and a touch of smokiness. The way that we're going to do that is specifically through use of flame and airflow to be able to maneuver these beans to that point that we're trying to get to. So this is a method that I use often. I will change which point in the second phase I will kind of stretch out the roast. So there's some points, some roasts I'm stretching out the second phase right as I enter into it, and sometimes I'm stretching out the roast at the very end of the second phase. It changes. It depends on what I'm trying to achieve and accomplish with the roast, but it also depends on the beans themselves. So this is a method that I find really helpful and really effective at getting balance with the flavors in the cup, using the specifics of this roaster that I roast on, and with these specific Bolivian beans. So I hope you guys like it and learn a new method here. Okay, so here we are. We're going to move on to a batch here, which is going to be a batch of Bolivian beans. These are beans that come from a project that we have been working with this university in Bolivia, it's an agricultural university in the Noryungas in Carmen Pampa, and they have been working with coffee plants for a very long time. We're honored to be able to connect with them and to work with them and to be able to import this beans and work on sort of some production details and things. And so I'm going to roast that one right now. Now this batch here is going to be, before every batch I like to think about what is my end goal, and then I'm going to step back to the details in my head to where we're going to start at. So this is a batch that it's a 5.3 pound batch, which yields a specific amount, because you lose weight when you roast coffee. So I start at a certain spot because I know I'm going to lose weight to get to this end goal. So I have a 5.3 pound batch in here. I want to get right just touching second crack. Okay, so second crack is going to happen 416 to 418, kind of right in those temperature ranges. And what I really like about a batch, and what I think like people who drink coffee at this temperature really enjoy, is that it has all the things present. There's a touch of smokiness. It's sweet. There's still acidity to it. There's just this whole there's this whole thing that's happening there. They're very big. Now, they are totally a different thing than lower temperature coffees. Really light roast, super clean, light bodies, bright flavors. This is not that. These are the type of roasts that have they're further developed. But if you approach this to this point in the roast in a specific way, you're able to preserve a lot of these flavors that you get excited about when you're picking out the green beans and figuring out how you want to roast them. And this is a method that I find people love these types of roasts. Most places would call this a medium roast, but like I've said before, every place talks about their coffee differently. I use the finish roast temperature to talk about my coffees, and some are high temps and some are low temps. High temps have smokiness, low temps is no smokiness. But then aside from that, you have these two genres of coffee, and in high temps you have a range of temperatures that are going to communicate different things. Like a 424 degree roast is very different from a 416 degree roast for higher temperatures. With lower temperature roast, 410 is very different from a 385, and those are just like these spectrums of flavors that get brought out at different points in the roast. Every roast is different, every batch is different, and so the approach that we have in roasting is to just completely embrace the reality that it's all different, and let's just each batch focus on what we do, like have our intention and our purpose to get somewhere, and build and hone our skills to be able to achieve the best coffee that we can roast through this batch that we have right in front of us. So we're about to begin. I want to end right at 416, 418, kind of right in that range. I don't care about the temperature, I care about where the beans are at. And it just so happens that there's a temperature reflected to that. And so we'll see specifically where it ends. Now, with this weight and with that place that I'm trying to get to, I'm thinking about how am I going to get there? And I am going to push these beans hard at the beginning. I'm going to back off a bit on the flame and stretch out the second phase. So the first phase of this roast, I'm going to be pushing. I'm going to get into the second phase. I'm going to pull back the heat. I'm going to open up the airflow. I'm going to begin to have sweetness begin to develop through stretching out that second phase. And then I'm going to begin to just let the heat slowly build back up into the environment and into those beans. So as we move through first crack, which is entering into the second phase, we are then going to just bring it nice and easy up to the finish by opening up the airflow, letting things develop, and wrapping it up. So that's what we're going to try to do. We're sitting here, I'm thinking about our charge, how the beans going in here, charging to the drum. Where do I want that to be temperature wise? 380 and 400 on a warmed up roaster with this weight. Perfect. I'm very excited about this. So I'm moving the beans, put them in the hopper, and I am going to now begin to roast. I'm clearing my timer, I'm checking my numbers here, and opening the hopper, start the batch. And the first thing you do is think about, what am I doing with flames? Well, like I told you, the first part of this batch, I am going to be increasing the flame. I'm pushing these beans in the first phase of this roast. And boom, okay. And this is the part of the roast where if you have a plan and you know what you're trying to achieve and you began it, this is the most chill it's going to be the whole roast. Like we've got our stuff, our airflow is not going to move, our beans are in here, our flame is up, and we're just going to let things be. And what we're doing is we're watching our time, we're watching our temperature, and we're just like letting these numbers understand, let our brain kind of take in and understand these numbers. Now, what you're going to see a lot, and what a lot of coffee, is pretty much everybody who roasts coffee is using roast log software. And there's a computer, so people are roasting. There's a computer here, and it has a graph of time and temperature, and it's gonna reflect that in the graph. And I don't roast that way. It's a very helpful tool for production, especially if you have a whole team of people who are roasting, or it's a company-wide. You need people to follow the same profile or something, but that's not how we do it here. I'm the only one who roasts for our coffee company, and it's not that other people couldn't, but we approach coffee in a different way, and we're trying to like hone in each batch, and it's not about following a profile or handing off profiles to people. There's a time and a place for that, but right now, this for me is, each batch is an expression of art. And so that's like, I like to have my head have to synthesize time and temperature, what's happening in the environment. Like, I'm not trying to hand that off to a computer to do the synthesizing and telling me in the form of a graph. I want to be right here. I want to look at it. I want to see the temperatures. I want to do the calculation of how fast this is moving, how fast is this increasing. So right now in this moment, we're at 2 minutes and 37 seconds, 217, 379, and I'm taking in how quickly we're increasing. Okay, so 4/10, 5/10 of a degree every second, and we're increasing 3/10, 2/10, 3/10, 2/10. So that now my brain is beginning to like, okay, I'm taking in, I understand the speed that we're at. I am pushing these beans right now, and I'm happy with that. This is what I want to do. Now what I'm going to do, as I talked about, we're going to push these beans, and then we're going to begin to like ease up on the flame and ease up. If you're moving, if you think about it, you're moving in time, we're going to just kind of slow down and begin to kind of stretch this thing out. Now, how do you do that? Well, there's a lot of ways. I mean, I could just like, if you're driving a car, I mean, you can just slam on the brakes and you stop, From my method, where I really think about this environment and how that environment affects the bean's flavor, unless I have a specific purpose in doing something that drastic, I'm not going to act that drastically. We're trying to like be gentle and like slowly, like we're pushing these things hard, but we also want to like coast out that movement of energy. So what are the tools that we have? We have flame and we have air, and those are like the ways that we make these maneuvers. Okay, now one thing that I can tell you is that if you are maneuvering your airflow and your flame at the same time, you are making a huge change in the environment. So what I like to do is I like to move my airflow first, open up the air, allow the environment to change through air moving, and then after that adjustment has happened, after like you moved it and the environment inside of this drum has changed, then I begin maneuvering the flame. For these types of roasts where I'm trying to like make this gentle move. Now, what I see is our beans are just beginning to turn. Now, they are not in the second phase yet, but they're just making this like, they're not green, cold beans anymore. And I'm seeing chaff being released. And when I look at this time and temperature, we're in the 270s, and so I know what I want to do here is I'm preparing to make this move. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to open my airflow up just enough to like change this environment inside of the roaster, and I'm going to sit here and watch our temperatures. I know I move the air, and I know that will increase the temperature at the beginning of a move. But now it's going to clear out the heat that's happening in there, and I'm going to begin to bring this down. I'm going to end this batch in the 440s, 440 to 445. I'm getting close to that range. I want to bring my flame down now that I've made my air movement. We've given it enough time. I'm going to slowly bring this back. And I'm going to bring it back in some ways. I want to say stall. Like I'm wanting to stall out the increase of environmental air temperature in the drum, so that these beans, when they are full on in the second phase, in the yellowing phase, deep in the Maillard reaction, they're just slowly cooking, letting the sweetness happen, not compromising acidity. How I understand it, and I think it's a general concept in coffee, is that the acidity is the first thing to go. So acidity is not that thing that hurts your stomach when you drink coffee. Acidity is the bright, juicy flavors that are inside of a coffee. Now, those are the first things to go. By poor processing, by mistakes in like shipping, by time, by, in the roaster, by pour roasting, or in the brewing method or whatever. Like, acidity is what goes away, which is one of the things that makes it just so like desirable, is that it's this very cherished special thing that will disappear because of all sorts of factors. Well, one of those factors is if you're doing a roast that enters at all into higher temperatures, you are going to lose those flavors by going to high temperatures. So if you're even going to begin to get into that range, you have to approach the roast, the entire roast, in a way that is like considering the acidity if you are trying to preserve it. So for me, I make slow movements on a roast like this, where a lower temperature roast, where you're going to end with a lower temp, you can really push it and really go hard and then coast the thing out, and there's still going to be a ton of acidity there preserved. But with this roast, it's on the air is open, it's coasting, but what's still happening, and I'm at my max environmental temperature. So looking at this, we're about 8 minutes in, we're definitely in the Maillard reaction, in the second phase. We're looking at how fast we're increasing here, and we're going by 4 and 3 and 3 and 3 and 3. So we're so this is pretty steady, which I like, which is what I'm designing. I want this to continue to move, to not actually stall out. But then we're looking here, and our environmental temperature is slowly decreasing. So this is not, everything is just kind of ease going into it. But what I know right now is that we're beginning, again, that we're in the second phase, we're about to turn into the third phase. We're about to get into the finished phase of the roast, which is the development phase. And I know that I don't want the environmental temperature to continue to go down. I want this thing to slowly, as the beans are mellowing out and going down, I want this environmental temperature to pick it up and to bring us to the end that I'm trying to get at. So right now I'm going to increase the flame slowly and evenly up to, I think I'm going to go right at 4, just under 4, right there. And I'm going to check on these beans as we're about to go into first crack. Now, first crack is a very loud, audible crack, and we got just a little bit of time on this, which is perfect. So now what I'm looking at, now check it out. We've made the adjustment on the flame, and we can see it reflected in the environmental temperature. Now it's holding steady, this is what I want right now, because everything is gonna slightly and slowly increase as we go. So I'm gonna pull the flame back just a little bit, just a touch, maybe 3.5. Like, every little movement right now is gonna have effects, like on the environment, on the beans. And so I'm keeping that going in my head. We are just about to hit first crack. So I can hear the first few snaps. I count it in my head once I've heard 5 snaps, nice and clear. So we're in first crack now. There's more. It's exotherming. Smoke is coming out. 10 minutes is when that happened. And so we are going to just let these beans do their thing. I'm going to open up the airflow now. Again, I'm going to just slowly increase this. I don't want to disturb what is going on in the environment. I want to help it, and I'm going to help that by opening up the airflow, allowing these beans. Now, what just happened as I opened that, as I can hear the air being pulled through the drum louder, and that movement of air, which is a movement of heat, which is a development of the beans. Now these beans are really cracking. First crack is like very actively going, and there are different versions of a first crack. There are some that are super hard and super fast, and it's all going at once, and there's some that are very drawn out. That has to do with the coffee, that has to do with the roast, that has to do with like all sorts of factors. But you want to note what is the quality of this crack that's happening. Now, my environmental temperature is a couple degrees higher than I'd like it to go, and that happens when you open and increase your airflow. So we're at 447. I'm pulling back the flame just a touch to try to get that. I don't need to make any drastic actions, but I've pulled it down to 2.5 inches. And the idea behind that is I want to get this thing settled down on the environmental temperature, because I don't want to mess with it now. It's like things are moving. We are in the final phase of this, I am going to continue to increase air. I will control the temperature with air instead of with flame, and I'm going to let this batch work itself up slowly and steadily in a very conducive, kind environment. We're going to work its way up to that point at which they are entering second crack, which is going to be, I'm going to really be able to tell the most through looking at the beans and through smelling them. And then there's this thing that happens with the smoke itself, like when you're smelling it, that it becomes thicker and you can feel it pushing more aggressively, and that's happening just before this transition happens. So we're at 395 on our bean temp, and we got 20 degrees on that to go. So what I'm going to do is I have more airflow that I can give this, and I just want to be strategic about that airflow, not to stall out the roast, because that will happen if you add too much air and not enough flame. You're gonna just kill your progress, which is a very helpful tool to have and to know how to do that, because there are times that you want to do that. For me right now, I don't want to do that. I want this to continue to increase because I've got another 15 degrees to go at this point. So I'm just touching, slowly open, touching the airflow, like letting it just kind of open up, and it's going to begin further development and opening up this environment. You know, the pressure in this has expanded. It's not as high pressure. It's a lower pressure every time you open the airflow. The environmental temperature is decreasing, which I'm totally fine with. I'm like 10 degrees away from being finished. So I'm going to open up the airflow even more, and I'm going to go all the way open with that, which will kind of, I mean, in my mind, this is plummeting. You know, the environmental temperature. It's not plummeting. Like, you're like, okay, it's going down by 1/10 per second. Like, but you know, that is a fast decrease. Now I'm looking at these beans, and the surface of them have tons of development of sugars. I can see that these have this beautiful color and tone. They've expanded. They're just, yeah, that's it right there. Okay, 416. You can hear there's just a couple snaps as it's coming out, being dropped. And that was a 14-minute roast, and we got to 416 degrees, just entering into that space of it being a high temp coffee. Just like the smokiness, like, is just entering into the cup of what will actually be tasteable. The things that are gonna like really be tasteable in this cup are a really big body, super sweet. There's gonna still be really nice preserved acidity in the cup, and have a touch of smokiness. So this is exactly what I was hoping to show you guys, because to get to that point in the roast, we had to the spot where all of these things are going to be present in the cup. We had to maneuver pushing these beans through space and time to get to where we wanted them to land, and in a way that we haven't lost the things that were important to us to have, you know, with us once we've arrived at the end of the batch. So this is a great example of a higher temp roast that's just getting to second crack, and is you know, maneuvering in this way where we're stalling out in the second phase and allowing the environmental temperature to increase again and to open up and bring itself, the beans are bringing themselves up to that second crack. So